Welcome to Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson. I recently participated as a Russian partisan in a tactical World War II reenactment. I've attended a few public reenactment events before as a bystander, a small one a few times, and one large event, but this was the first time I've participated as a reenactor, and the first time I've had anything to do with a tactical event as well. Overall, there were a lot of great highs, but some lows in there as well. Being a first-timer, everyone was very welcoming and helpful. Thankfully, they were also needing bodies to help even out the numbers, as they were a bit Axis-heavy. And being a smaller event as well, they were pretty forgiving of the fact that all I had was some Cold War Soviet Y-straps with pouches, a finished jacket, some old man pants from the Goodwill, old dress shoes, and a Mosin carbine. I know some people can be pretty nitpicky about everything being period correct, but being a guy essentially coming in off the streets and not a part of any official unit, they were lenient, understanding, and welcoming. There were various German units, one Canadian unit, one other partisan, and a small group of Russians. Due to the Axis having a numbers advantage, a German armored car at the event was given to the Allies as a captured unit. This tactical event had different battles which each had their own scenarios, objectives, and rules. The first had different supplies at the bottom of a valley to capture, which gave advantages in the rest of the day's scenarios based on the outcome. The second was capture the flag, with 3 flags on the field. When you capture it, you raise your Allied flag or your Axis flag, and try to hold 2 positions when time expires to win. The third was VIP, where 1 soldier on each side was a VIP, which was only revealed when they were killed, and then they had to be brought back to the spawn point. And then a final shorter battle where the Allies defended an area the Germans were trying to blow up. The 7.62x54R blanks that I had were short compared to a normal cartridge, and therefore led to some feeding issues based on that, including sometimes just taking a nosedive down into the internal magazine of the rifle once it's fed past the other cartridges, which is a unique jam I had not seen before that would be specific to the shorter cartridges. I'm not very familiar with blanks, but if you have some of the longer ones close to regular cartridge length, at least that issue would not arise. I stuck with the Russians through all 4 scenarios, and all but 3 of them were new to World War II reenacting, though 2 of the others were veterans of Civil War reenacting. Many of their Mosins were borrowed, and they had feeding issues or just issues in general, partially from the blanks, and partially, I think, from not being too familiar with the rifles. I've only also fired blanks once or twice before, so I was not too versed in the unique issues using them entails. I tried to assist someone at one point where the blank was partially stuck in the chamber, and due to there not being a bullet, trying to use a clean rod to pop it out, the rod just slipped past the cartridge and came out back past it into the receiver area, which I had never seen before with normal ammunition. It was definitely interesting to see these World War II uniforms in the woods in a combat scenario. The German SS camo uniforms blended in really well, and the Russian wearing a greatcoat was basically invisible against tree trunks apart from his helmet. And I lost track of him at one point, even though he was pretty close to me. I also noticed that helmets were usually the most visible thing, and that could be a few things. It could be just the starkness of the shape, the color most of the time, or it could be that heads are sticking up higher, so it's easier to see their movements in general with the brush lower to the ground, or the fact that if you're taking a look, you stick your head out to see something while leaving the rest of your body in cover. The combat can be fun, but also very frustrating. It's up to each individual to call their own hits, and most of the time, I'm sure people are completely fair, because it genuinely is hard to tell. I know there's plenty of times, though, where I personally lined someone up in my sights, they're not moving, and shot, and they either didn't notice because they weren't looking my way, or even if they were facing me, they just didn't see. Though sometimes people do tend to think, well, I'm too far away, so it doesn't count, which, yeah, I mean, honestly, if this gunfire was real in this small area, we'd all be getting killed by things going through trees and everything. So people generally only called the hits when they were close enough that was definitely a hit, and definitely them, and definitely noticed. And to be fair, I'm sure it was the same with me several times throughout the day, where I didn't call hit because I didn't see it, but it can still be frustrating. For instance, I've played paintball in the woods before, and you know when you get hit, which makes it easier because there is actual feedback when you're hit with something. So here it's really on the honor system, and sometimes people will start calling out, hey, you're dead, when they're shooting, but at the same time, you may be thinking, well, I shot and killed you in my eyes already as well. There was also one point where a German basically fired one shot, and there were 4 of us right there, but it was definitely a good hit, so someone should be dead, but we all ended up taking it, when in reality, obviously, one should have died, and the rest should have been able to fire back and kill him. But at the moment, it felt weird to have a discussion about it, though talking to another reenactor later, they said we probably could have, but it just felt weird at the time. Also, if someone's retreating, there's no point shooting them in the back because they won't see it, so it won't be called out. Even though it's really an easy way to line someone up in your sights, and people may actually do that tactically on purpose as a way to disengage from an area before they die. I don't know that for certain, but I thought about it after the fact. Another thing is that when you are hit and dead and going to respawn, at this event you were supposed to remove your helmet so people know you're dead. Depending on the rules of the scenario, sometimes you go back to an area to respawn, sometimes you just disengage far enough from the battle and you can respawn, sometimes you need to find a medic, etc. But sometimes people just hang around in the middle of the battle area, and sometimes they put their helmet back on because they're tired of holding it. And then you're just kind of talking with your squad or thinking to yourself, are they dead or are they just standing around? There was one occasion where we saw 2 Germans standing in the middle of the road talking for several minutes, one with a helmet on and one with it off. So we eventually decide, yeah, they must be dead. So we start moving. Then the one puts his helmet back on and begins shooting at us. So things like that happen. But again, I can understand it in some sense because the respawn area wasn't always clear, or it was hard to get back to, or you have to get through all this area to get back to a road to move back to another area, since it's a forested area, and some of the areas aren't super distinct or clear, or maybe you're waiting for a medic, figuring out what to do, where to go before respawning, or you could just be taking a breather before walking back, but it does make it more difficult than it needs to be because there are people that may or may not be alive just standing around in the area. Also, people on your side standing around can help lead others to you when they are super visible if they haven't gone back yet, which happened to me on at least one occasion. There can also be a lot of waiting. The scenario started later than posted because we were waiting on some people to arrive. People are there but not ready. And, that's going to happen. This isn't a job, but there's also waiting for the battle to start and can be waiting within the battles themselves. The second scenario of Capture the Flag, we captured one of the flags at the very beginning, and we were told to hold the position. So I was there for most of the battle, and no one got close to me to shoot, so I was basically just kind of there because I wanted to hold the objective and win. But eventually someone did take my place to allow me to move forward and get into some combat. And then again in the fourth scenario, I got in a good defensive position since it was a defensive battle, and I never moved anywhere else after I got in place. I got kills out of it because it was a good spot, but mostly I was just waiting for people to come into my field of fire. It was also rather uncomfortable, as you can probably imagine, traipsing through the woods with lots of thorns everywhere. My legs looked like I lost a battle with a gaggle of kittens, or just trying to stay in cover in uncomfortable positions, or kneeling on rocks, tripping over low fences, dealing with slippery terrain. Everything you'd kind of expect, but should be prepared for if you're going out into reenacting. As a firearms and gear channel, it was very cool seeing all this used in the field, the struggle and comfort levels faced by their use throughout a single day. Obviously, I'm not trained, and most of the people I was with were pretty new, but it was also illuminating how easily the fog of war is present, not knowing what's going on just a little ways away. Most of the scenarios, I didn't even see the Canadians. Even though the designated fields weren't that big, it does give just a small, much more safe and sanitized taste of what soldiers went through and can give you an idea of what they had to deal with on a functional level of gear and firearms when under some degree of stress. You definitely need to be cautious of muzzle placement when shooting blanks at people or around people. There's a rule of just shouting safety kill when aiming at someone if you're too close so you don't potentially hurt them or deafen them, since blanks are still dangerous. And this also means you need to be aware of where you are in relation to your allies as well when shooting, so you don't have a muzzle right at their ears. Also, you need to be a good sport. not just for calling your own hits, but also not revealing who killed you or where the person that killed you was, since, you're not a ghost that can communicate with the people that are alive. The highs were very high. Getting kills felt great, and capturing an objective was thrilling, but there was also a lot of frustration from the things I've mentioned, and also just what I would say were bad orders or others not following orders, people going off on their own. And granted, I'm sure people want different things out of it and want to find their own fun in different ways, so I don't blame anyone for wanting to do it their own way, but it kind of conflicts with others depending on what you want to do. For instance, one of the Russians kept wanting to do a big charge where we all die on the second scenario when we had an objective, and I wanted to hold it and win. But to each their own on that sort of thing. Everyone running it and in command were adamant about making sure everyone had water, staying hydrated, brought apples or something to the field in case they needed something to eat right away, since where we ate our meals was a little trek outside of the designated field of battle. The people were all great. They were friendly and welcoming. Getting kills felt great, and I think it was a good event overall for a first timer. And it's one of those things where the further you get away from it, the less you really remember the negatives and the more you think about the positives. That's really all my thoughts on my first reenactment experience. Let me know in the comments if you've ever reenacted before or have any advice for people getting into the hobby. Obviously, this is my view as a greenhorn and after one event, so you may think I'm misrepresenting things based on this single experience, and if so, feel free to let me know. Please consider supporting the channel through Patreon. If you can't, I understand. Please subscribe, like the video, and share it with others. Thanks for watching.